Welcome, and thank you for participating in the Fiscal Year 2022 Department of Education Undergraduate International Foreign Language Technical Assistance Webinar. My name is Tanyelle Richardson, and I am your Program Officer. If you are watching this live, you may post questions in the chat. If you are not participating during the live viewing, please send all questions to useful@ed.gov. The application for new awards is now available via grants.gov, and the application closes on May 31st, 2022. During this webinar, we will talk about the purpose of the program, the application process, eligibility, selection criteria, and tips and questions. Program overview. The Undergraduate International Studies and Foreign Language Program is designed to provide funds to plan, develop, and carry out programs to strengthen and improve undergraduate instruction in international studies and foreign language. So what that means is that it must be at the undergraduate level, and it must strengthen or improve undergraduate instruction in international studies and foreign language. And the term international studies has been broadened to include anything as a hybrid with international. It could be a interdisciplinary program. It could be a collaborative effort, but it has to have some international component into it, as well as teaching of foreign languages. Eligibility. You must be a recognized institution of higher education, or you can be a consortium of institutions of higher education applying as one entity. You can actually also be a nonprofit as well and apply for useful funds. Institutional eligibility. An institution application must contain plans for improving, strengthening undergraduate instruction in both international studies and foreign languages. As I mentioned before, the international studies definition can be broadened. Participant eligibility. To be an active participant as a project director, faculty member, or student for direct financial benefit of the useful funds, you must be a citizen, national, or permanent resident of the United States, or you can be an individual currently employed in the United States school system, institution of higher education, or nonprofit agency. For nonprofit agencies that apply for useful for direct funds, the nonprofit must be linked to a higher education program and make significant contributions to strengthening and improving undergraduate instruction in international studies and foreign languages. For FY 2020, we are estimating making at least 30 new awards at $2.8 million. The average award for a single institution is around $90,000, and for a consortial or partnership grant, it is $110,000. Now, mind you, this is based on estimates of a appropriation that we are targeting. It could be more, it could be less as far as the awards, but right now we are believing we can make 30 new awards this year. We will reject any application that exceeds the recommended amounts in the NIA, meaning that if you are a single applicant and you exceed over $100,000, or if you are a consortial applicant and you exceed over $120,000 per year, you will automatically be disqualified for funding. International studies definition. So as I mentioned before, we've broadened that to include other fields like economics, social environment, legal, and health. So as long as your program speaks to having a internationalized curriculum or development in those areas, you are eligible. We have funded programs in nursing, engineering, business, climate studies. We have funded different types of programs outside of the traditional international studies definition, so that can be done. Eligible program activities. This is a listing of eligible program activities, which is not all inclusive, but programs generally look like the following: development of global international studies, the development of topics like peace studies or international health. You can use the funding to also create innovative curricula. You can also use the funds to conduct research and specialized teaching materials, establish internships, service learning opportunities, both abroad and domestically. And you can use the funds to help partner with faculty abroad. For example, if you are doing a virtual study activity with another faculty in, let's say, Africa, you can use the funds to sponsor that virtual activity. And so you can partner with other institutions abroad. A complete listing of eligible activities can be found in the application package, but of course, my rule of thumb would be if your program has some sort of international component, um, married with another, for example, area studies type, or as I mentioned before, you can do interdisciplinary studies as well, then those are the types of projects and activities that we look to fund. Matching requirement. The useful program does require a dollar for dollar match. You can use cash contributions from private sector corporations or foundations to equal that match. You can use a combination of hard dollars also from your institution, as well as a third-party sponsor or a collaborator to meet the match. But it must be there. You must have a dollar for dollar match. For every dollar you ask for the federal government, you must match with cash or in kind. If you're asking for $90,000 for Fed funding, you must match $90,000 for your complete program cost to be $180,000. That's just one example of the dollar for dollar match. The program does have a special rule for those institutions who are eligible under Title III, Title V funding. You can request a waive of the match or a reduced match. So that is allowable if you are a recognized Title III or Title V institution, meaning that you've been recognized for this fiscal year. You have an actual active letter stating that you are a Title III, Title V institution to be eligible for that waive or special rule match. And you must also submit documentation that you are in need of a waiver or reduction. Just because you are a Title III, Title V institution does not guarantee you a waived match or reduced match if you don't show that. So that can be shown in a letter from your institution or other supporting materials to show and document why the match or the reduced match is important. Allowable cost. We do allow funding to be used in the following ways: for salaries, for summer stipends, for library and teaching materials, professional service costs for consultants and evaluators, costs for developing study abroad or internship programs, costs for domestic or overseas travel. Those are all that fall under allowable costs. Program statutory assurances. So the useful program requires you to meet the following statutory assurances that shows evidence that the applicant has conducted extensive and prior planning to submitting the application, an assurance that faculty and administrators of all relevant departments and programs served by the applicant are involved in ongoing collaboration with regard to achieving stated objectives of the application. More importantly, we do require in the application that you explain how this application reflects diverse perspectives and a wide range of views and generate debate among world regions and international affairs where applicable, meaning that you have to have a statement saying that you've met that particular diverse perspective requirement. And that is a requirement for all useful applicants. This information is all outlined in the application package, so if it's a little confusing, we can also address that in the Q&A down the road, but it's in the application package. Selection criteria. The useful program has a selection criteria for both institutional applications as well as partnership or nonprofit applications. The following reflect the 105-point total for institution and consortial applications: plan of operation, key personnel, budget, evaluation plan, adequacy of resources, commitment to international studies, elements of proposed international studies program, and need for prospective results. Those are the key selection criteria, and we are offering 2 competitive preference priorities this year for a total of 105 points. If you are applying as a public or private nonprofit, your maximum points can only reach 100. And so your biggest criterion would be to explain the need for potential impact for proposed projects in improving international studies. We rarely receive applications from nonprofit agencies, but if you are one, you're only going to be addressing these criterion. Selection criterion. Like I mentioned before, we have 5 basic selection criteria. Plan of operation. This is where you would explain exactly what you're going to be doing over the next 24 months, meaning that for year 1, you're going to outline your program this way. Year 2, you're going to outline your program that way. Applicants should describe in which ways resources, personnel will be used in achieving objectives and project measures, including anything that's pertinent to the operating aspects of the grant. How, why, when the project activities will take place. All those things should be included in this section. Please be clear on how the project will improve equal access and equipment for project participants regarding of race, color, national origin, gender, age, or disability. All of those aspects should be included in the plan of operation, which is worth up to 15 points. Quality of key personnel. Here is where you talk about the actual personnel involved in the grant, worth 10 points. Applicants should address the qualifications of the project director, which include their academic training, the field expertise. If they are specializing in a particular world area, it should align. If you are a project director, you should have experience in the world area you're targeting, for example. Any kind of background for program administration, all those things can be explained in this section. Also, it's also important that the time commitment of the project is listed here of all key personnel, especially if you are charging federal dollars to any activities aligned with key personnel. Please be clear to include their titles, their responsibilities, as I mentioned before, their time commitments as well. Budget and cost effectiveness, worth up to 10 points. Here is where the applicants should demonstrate and justify all allowable expenses presented here, meaning that they are reasonable and they are related to the exact activities you are proposing. They're necessary to the project goals. This should be spelled out in both a Excel spreadsheet of some sort, as well as a project narrative, a budget narrative to explain the overall cost of the project. Applicants should also talk about the relationship between the costs and the actual objectives, and make sure that when you're talking about your matching funds, for example, that it's clear what you're matching. If you're matching release time, a dollar amount should be assigned to a release time. If you are matching actual hard dollars, those should be clearly defined in your budget narrative. I always recommend in this section to give a actual spreadsheet for year 1, year 2, for matching for a federal request. It just makes it easier for the review of the whole application process. To make it very, very clear, you should do some sort of spreadsheet to outline your costs. I actually provided a sample of the better way to display your budget. It's all sample. You can choose to display it how you wish, but this way helps the program staff look at the costs associated with each activity. And in your narrative, you'll explain the personnel, the fringe, the travel, etc. As you'll see here, for the useful budget, the request was $83,000 here in direct costs. You can charge the grant up to 8% of the indirect costs for a total of what you see here. Now, if you have a higher indirect cost other than 8%, Unfortunately, you cannot use that to reclaim that in your matching funds. It's 8% for matching, it's 8% for federal requests across the board. Even if you have a higher negotiated indirect cost rate, you must only claim 8% in this indirect cost. You'll also see here where, for example, I gave a partnership line item here where you can see where your partner will contribute a certain dollar amount, which will be added to the grand total. And that's the way the budget is set up here. Evaluation plan, worth 20 points. A well-designed evaluation plan should clearly articulate the goals, the objectives, both qualitative and quantitative, how you're going to collect, show progress, any kind of plans for evaluation, whether they be, surveys, formal evaluation, whether you are going to do anything related to the evaluation of the program should be outlined in the section. You can hire an outside evaluator to evaluate your programs. I recommend having it someone who is familiar with international programs, as well as someone outside of your home institution. It should have someone that has, some sort of knowledge about what you're doing, but can give you a unbiased evaluation. Evaluations are meant to help you improve, not to penalize you per se, but to help you improve the overall project phases. And that's how we look at outside evaluations. And it would also, it's not recommended here, but if you gave a timeline to highlight key components of the evaluation plan, that's always a added benefit. Adequacy of resources. Although it's only worth 5 points, I always recommend asking yourself, what resources do you need to accomplish the goals, and what resources do you already have in place? For example, if you already have some sort of virtual computer lab that you are using for your virtual internship program, use that here as far as showing the kind of resources you already have in place. Whether it be supplies, facilities, things of that sort should be included in the adequacy of resources. Commitment to international studies. Here is where you actually talk about your commitment to the useful program, meaning that you are committed to doing the work as you describe in your application. You describe any strengths you already have, and also here as well, things that you hope to gain from useful funding. To what extent are you going to be involved in the planning of the program? How the administration of your institution is helping you with the overall commitment. Um, Making sure that it's very, very clear in the application that your institution or institutions, if you are applying as a consortial application, are fully invested in seeing this project through. Although we do not require you to tell us what's going to happen after the funding, it's always good to have a plan for leveraging. If you are using the funds to develop a study abroad program, you should talk about what you're going to do after the federal funding ends. How are you going to support that service? All those things to commit to the project should be discussed in this section, and is worth 15 points. Elements of proposed international studies, worth up to 10 points. Here's where you would describe the extent to which your project will strengthen the overall program in international studies and foreign languages. You would discuss here, for example, how revised courses will improve the overall curricula. You would talk about how internationalization will improve the overall institutional goals, and how the program goals are aligned to your institutional goals. For example, if you're hoping to attract more students in the area of Farsi, you would talk about exactly how you're going to be doing that in this particular section. How are you going to expand your instruction if you already have existing foreign language programs? Anything to demonstrate the number and types of new courses or revised courses. Um, This is where you should actually discuss it in this section, and it's worth 10 points. Need for results of proposed program. So here's the section where you discuss the overall needs again. For example, if we have useful funds, we can leverage this activity to result in this progress. So you're going to talk about the overall need. You want to give information on the application as far as how you're going to use the federal funds, how this actually results in implementation of the program overall, the likelihood that the program will help leverage additional funding or additional activities. So you're basically saying useful funds are necessary because of your why. Here's where you would discuss that. This particular criterion is only for nonprofit organizations, and here is your bulk of your points for 40 points. You'll talk about how federal funds will contribute to achieving the goals, explain any kind of relation to higher education you have. For example, if you are a nonprofit who actually works in the area of foreign languages, explain why the funding is important to help leverage your voice in higher education and promote foreign languages. So you really, really want to come back to why a nonprofit needs the useful funding, all in this particular criterion, worth 40 points. For FY 2022, we have two competitive priorities, one for community colleges and MSIs, and one for foreign languages. For the MSI community college priority, we do require you, of course, to be a recognized MSI or community college. If you are the lead applicant or a single applicant, you can receive 3 points. If you are applying as a consortial and you happen to be in a consortium where you happen to have an MSI or community college, you are eligible for 2 points. So if you are a single applicant who meets that criterion, 3 points. If you're applying as a consortium and you have at least one of those MSI community colleges in that consortia, you can receive 2 points. For competitive preference number 2, which is where we encourage foreign language teaching and learning. If you require 2 years of foreign language for your institution, you are eligible for this 2-point competitive preference priority. And if you, that's either for them coming in with 2 years of foreign language, or that's a graduating requirement. Those things meet the guidelines of receiving the 2 points. It's either you have the foreign language requirement or you don't. 2 points for the max of 5 points you can possibly earn as a competitive preference priorities. This year, we're only offering one invitational priority. And invitational priorities are designed to garner interest. This year, it's the training in less commonly taught languages, the focus on thematic area studies or international programs. And we're looking for programs that focus on foreign languages outside of French, German, and Spanish. Now remember, it's an invitational priority. You're not going to be given points, nor you're going to be penalized if you choose to address this or not. It's a way to understand exactly the pulse of commonly taught languages. They vary from year to year. So, it's no points given, nor points penalty if you choose to address it or not. Useful performance measures. Although we consider useful to be a seed money program, we are tasked with our grantees being able to provide evidence that they are meeting their goals and objectives of their projects. Their measurements should be a part of the proposed project evaluation plan, along with the measures in progress and goals. So this is how we show Congress that the funding is vital and important to internationalizing the curriculum, to internationalizing programs overall. This is the evidence, and this is how we collect it. Although not required, I do encourage for supporting materials to include appendices. Here's where, according to the application, you would upload things like your program profile form, and it's self-explanatory in the application. This is where we collect data on who you are as an applicant. Any supplemental information, including letters of support, VITAs, those types of things, resumes, evaluation assessment tools, all those things are included in the appendices. If you are a Title III, Title V institution, here is where you will upload your letter, one from the Department of Education giving you the eligibility for being a Title III, Title V, and two, your request and why you need the waiver. So this is where you will upload all those things in the appendices section. Application tips. Getting organized is important to the funding of your application. And here's a couple of ideas or a couple of recommendations that we give in order for you to get organized when you are writing and doing all the hard work to submitting your application. We have funded abstracts on our website. We also recommend that you develop linkages, especially if you are collaborating with different schools in your institution. Always look at the information that we post on our useful website. You can see, like I mentioned before, abstracts. You can see other supporting information like our press kit. We also have a sample needs analysis uh, a help guide to help you with that. So again, it's up to you to become organized, but these are tips that have been collected over years and have worked for our successful grantees. Writing your proposal, again, this is a recommendation, not a exact science situation, but we always encourage you to please address each and every selection criterion in its entirety. Don't assume that you're from a known institution, that they know all about who you are and why useful is important. You're going to have to give us an exact picture based on the criterion why the funding is important. Always having as much detail in your application. Anything that's left up to guessing does not give enough information. So specificity of detail is always encouraged. Let's see, I would always have someone proof your application, making sure that your dates, acronyms, anything that you are referring to or referencing to is accurate. Also, if you have been a previous useful grantee and you do mention that in your application as far as leveraging new funding for old activities, that is opening up that conversation. So, for example, if you use the useful funds in 2018 to develop a interdisciplinary program with nursing and foreign languages, and you mention that in your new application with no results mentioned, that is a red flag. So I highly encourage you to link, especially if you are using your past success for future success. And remember, again, it's a competitive process. So as much detail outlining using the selection criterion is vital to you receiving consideration of funding. And as I mentioned before, on our useful website, we do include updated materials, the press kit, the brochure, abstracts to help you in your development of your application process. Grants.gov is the only way you can submit your application. The application closes on May 31st at 11:59. I highly encourage you to please don't wait till the last day. You want to make sure that you do that as soon as possible. Don't wait till the last minute to submit. For further information, we've included some resources to help you along the way. Grants.gov has a wonderful submission tip outline to help you with that. Also, you can see information on all of our programs on our IFLE website, including newsletters. that actually gives interviews for past grantees for all of our programs. Useful information to help you prepare when you move forward. As always, when in doubt, seek the program out. Highly encourage you to ask questions early. Remember, May 31st is the deadline. You have any direct questions, you can send emails to the useful program mailbox, or you can actually send me an email. Thank you. I'll be around for a few minutes to address any questions in the chat. But if you're not watching this live, please take a look at the video description for more information about the program and our useful website.